Welcome to the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast, the home of behind-the-scenes interviews, stories, and memories that celebrate the heritage of the great game of hockey. The Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast is hosted by Mark Willand.
Today's guest of the PHA podcast is Frank Simonetti, an All-American collegiate player at Norwich University who went on to play 4 seasons for the Boston Bruins in the 1980s. Frank shares interesting stories from his Bruins career, including partnering on defense with Ray Bourque, his somewhat awkward introduction to Cam Neely, and the talented 1980s Bruins teams. We also discuss Frank's annual Bowl with a Bruin event that raises money for Dana Farber Institute in Boston. This episode of the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast is sponsored by Pro Stock Hockey, your online source for authentic Pro Stock hockey equipment, sticks, gloves, and all the rest. If the pros don't use it, they don't sell it. Visit ProStockHockey.com. We're back with Frank Simonetti, a 4-year defenseman with the Boston Bruins in the 1980s and a member of the Boston Bruins alumni team. Frank, thanks for being on with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Mark.
Well, you were clearly making the most of your time in college, it would seem, because in addition to playing multiple sports, you achieved a degree in mechanical engineering. Talk a little bit about college life and basically balancing all of that and getting it all done to a high level.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that Norwich wasn't exactly a hockey hotbed for an avenue to the NHL, and that's certainly why I didn't go there. I did participate in Norwich to get an engineering degree. I always liked a good challenge, and I looked for the hardest major that they had at the time. I always fancied myself maybe as being an inventor one day. I would like to break down engines and build them back up, and bicycles and this and that growing up. So I was mechanically inclined. So that seemed very natural for me. But it's interesting, I learned fairly quickly that not everybody believed that being in engineering, being a multi-sport athlete was the way to go in college. And I'll give you an example. During the soccer season, my freshman year, if you played sports at Norwich and you had a test, an exam on a game day, you were given an exemption to go play the game. And my computer science teacher, who didn't necessarily believe in that, said, if you go play your game, I'm going to fail you on this test. Well, I went and played the game anyway. And he said to me, he goes, no one from Norwich has ever become a professional athlete before, so you should focus on your studies. Okay, freshman year, I get this message. I go play the game. Years go by. We actually become friendly, the professor and I, and he came up to me my senior year, actually after I came back to the school, after I turned pro, and he apologized, and he said he will never, ever shy a kid away from participating in sports or any other extracurricular activities that might have taken his focus off of schooling. So it was a good lesson for the professor that, yes, people can do that. And it was good motivation for me, because every time I maybe had some doubts about being able to balance both education and sports, I thought back to that moment and gave me a little extra push.
Right, that's a great story, and future Norwich students could thank Frank and your professor for coming to that accord and seeing life in a new light. When you were at Norwich, when did it become apparent that you may have the ability to become a professional hockey player?
Well, I think you're in a bubble when you're playing. You don't always realize what's going on around you and what people think. You're just going out there trying to do the best you can. Looking back now and hearing some of the stories that people tell me, that it was uncommon, even for a small school like Norwich, who had an excellent hockey reputation, for a freshman to walk in and play as many minutes as I did. And we actually had a pretty solid freshman class that year. You may recall Don Cahoon, a big star at BU, and
right.
He ended up he recruited me and many others from the Middlesex League onto Norwich. So we had a very strong and young team, but it was fairly uncommon back then. But it's interesting. My school I really wanted to go to at the time was UMass Lowell, who was really killing it in Division 3, moving up into Division 1. But they didn't want me. So Norwich played Lowell a couple of times our first 2 years, and much like the college professor giving me motivation, playing against Lowell gave me tremendous motivation to play, and we all played well. We won, I think, one or both of the games, and the coach of Lowell, I think it was Jack Riley, I'm not sure the name, came up to Pete Cahoon after the game and said, "Hey, where'd you get this kid, Simonetti?" He goes, "Well, he wanted to go to your school, but you didn't want him." And the guy just rolled his eyes and walked away. So at that point, I knew that I was getting some pub. The Colorado Rockies hockey team, which later became the New Jersey Devils, they were scouting me apparently freshman year. I heard about it later in the season. And so there were some scouts watching me during games, but as you mentioned off the top, we were Division 2 at the time. Players didn't really ascend to the NHL. It wasn't the goal of the players, it wasn't the goal of the program, but I think scouts were beginning to look in all avenues to try to find quality players. But as time went on, there was no drafting. I didn't get drafted by anyone. Teams looked, but didn't touch, if you will. So I graduated college as an All-American, and that's where I thought my career had ended. Having a good 4-year run at school, and I was off to men's leagues.
Right.
One of the kids came to play.
Right. But of course, that didn't happen, and I was curious. Who reached out to you on the Bruins, and how did that whole process start with signing with the hometown Boston Bruins?
Well, Joe Lyons was the local Boston Bruins scout. He covered the New England territory. And I'm not sure, I never quite found out if Joe ever actually saw me play in college, or did he just hear about me and see that I achieved All-American status. I also saw that I was a local kid growing up in Stoneham, Mass. The Bruins had a penchant at the time for bringing in a couple of local players to training camp every year just to generate some local excitement. And so I thought that potentially that's what I was. But before I got to camp, Joe invited me to his summer league team to play in the summer league team in Hingham, where they had prospects and draftees and pros that are just trying to tune up themselves during the summer. So I got to play in that league, and I did pretty well. And I remember the story once. Me and this guy were jostling in front of the net. So I gave him a two-hander across the shins. And I figured I got to start stepping up a little bit. He just looked at me, shook his head, and skated away. Mm-hmm. And I've come to find out afterwards that was Jay Miller. Oh. And if he had wanted to, my career may have ended right there. I don't know. So yeah, we ended up going to training. He was an invitee to the Bruins training camp that fall as well, and we became friends. So that was an interesting experience. So after that summer league team, I did well enough to gain an invite to the Bruins camp and go to camp. And I had no expectations. I had no knowledge, really. I'd never been through a training camp, obviously. There was really no one to talk to that they could coach me up on this. So I just went in and skated and did what I do best, which was focus on my game. And so they had a rookie game down in Hartford. We all got out in Hartford, play the Whalers, the rookie team. And I did fairly well there. And then a few days go by, and they post the rosters for the first preseason games against Buffalo. They were a back-to-back in Rochester and Lake Placid. So I walked right by the list. Didn't even think to look up at it, not thinking for a moment.
Right.
that I would be on, and somebody grabbed me and said, "Hey, you going on the trip?" I was shocked, to say the least, but I had a problem, Mark. So I go in to see Coach Cheevers, Jerry Cheevers at the time. I said, "Coach, I've got a problem." He goes, "Well, what's the problem, Frank? Tell me what it is." I said, "Well, my sister's getting married Saturday morning, and that's the day of the first game in Rochester. I'm in the wedding." He goes, "Well, what time is the wedding?" I told him. He goes, "Do you think you can be to the airport by 1 o'clock?" I said, "Yes, I can." He goes, "Well, we'll hold the plane for you." So I'm walking on clouds at this point. Right, I go to the wedding. I don't even remember a bit of the wedding. Get to the airport. We fly away. I get a goal that night, an assist, a goal in Lake Placid the next day. I'm thinking, wow, I love this hockey thing, right? So we play a total of 11 preseason games that year. I'm in 9 of the 11, which again was somewhat unprecedented for the Bruins.
Right.
So I'm playing these games. I'm playing well. I'm playing with Bourque. I'm playing with Kluzak, this guy, that guy, getting time on the power play, penalty kill. It was really an exciting time. The second to last game, we're playing up in the Portland Civic Center against the New Jersey Devils, and Gord Kluzak was coming across the blue line, and push driver went low, took his knee out. So Gord was out for the season. And that was the first time I thought, wow, maybe I might make this team, because now one of their key defensemen's gone, maybe they're light on D. But we went on. The last game of the season, the last preseason game, is down in the Providence Civic Center. We're playing the 4-time Stanley Cup champion New York Islanders. Billy Smith's and that Bossy's there. They're all there. Trotsky, they're all there. I signed my contract on the bus ride down. I score the winning goal in overtime, and I'm getting chills just thinking about it now after all these years, Mark. My parents were in the stands. It was really a wonderful experience. And now preseason is over. And now what do? All during the training camp, recruits and prospects and draftees are getting sent back to the minors, sent back to juniors, released outright. And I just keep keeping on, if you will. So camp ends. Nobody tells me anything. I go up to the trainer, Bud Carpenter at the time, or equipment manager. I said, "Bud, where do I go?" He says, "Well, you made the team." And that's when it hit me. I go, wow, this is surreal. Now you start thinking about it. Well, it didn't last long, Mark, because each training camp, the Bruins attended the Holloway-Logan golf tournament on the South Shore. So we're all at the golf tournament. This is like maybe 2 or 3 days after camp ended. I'm out there in the hole, whatever, and this golf cart starts working its way towards our hole, towards our tee box. And the woman says, "Are you Frank Simonetti?" I said, "Yes, I am." She goes, "Well, Mr. Sinden would like to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So I get a cart, I drive to then a payphone, which for all you kids out there, that's before cell phones. I call Harry. He says, "Frank, you had a tremendous camp, but we've had a change of heart. We'd like to send you down to Hershey for some seasoning." And it was like, naturally, somebody stuck the pin in the balloon. I said, okay, well, so they're on Hershey. And unfortunately for all the Bruin players on that team, it was a Philadelphia Flyer-run team, and the Bruins rented spaces. So we didn't get primary ice time, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
So we would play. Sometimes I'd sit on the bench the whole game. Sometimes I'd play some, in and out. And it was strange. I started having second thoughts because I had 2 engineering jobs lined up when I graduated college. I thought, well, maybe the smart move is to go back to engineering, but I gave it some time. And so we're approaching Christmas now, and everybody's going home for Christmas break. They give us a few days, and I said, well, I'll give it some thought, talk to the family when I'm home. And the coach, the GM, comes up and says, hey, you're going to Boston. You're playing tomorrow night against Montreal. I said, whoa.
Merry Christmas.
Game on, right? Drive up, or I don't know if I drove or flew up to Boston from Hershey. I get in the game, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I had 6 shifts. I caught Guy Lafleur from behind. I don't tell too many people that he beat me in the first place, so I had to catch him. But
right.
Anyway, I thought I played a solid game, and I remember sitting in the locker room afterwards, and the assistant GM at the time, Tom Johnson, came up to me and said, "Hey, kid," with a cigar in his mouth. "Hey, kid,
right.
how'd you think you did?" I said, "Mr. Johnson, I think I did pretty well." He goes, "Me too," and he walked away. Now, your day off for Christmas, the day after Christmas, the team is leaving on a 12-day, 4-game road trip to the West Coast. Again, no one tells me what's going on. So I go ask. He said, "Well, bundle up your sticks. You're going on the road trip." And I was with the Bruins for the rest of that season. So played a lot of games, had a lot of fun. And that led to the start of the career.
Right, and it was an interesting year, that 84-85, your first year. As you noted, Jerry Cheevers, Star of the Year offer coach, Harry Sinden, I believe, came in and replaced him during the year. A lot of talent on the team. I was curious, when you look back at it, a couple of players that stick out and a couple of guys you remain close to today. Number one, your impressions back then of playing with Ray Bourque.
Well, I was very fortunate in that I was paired with Ray quite often when I was out there. I'm sure that was for a reason, to offset the rookie with the seasoned veteran, not only seasoned veteran, but one of the best players in the NHL. And I felt very fortunate because whenever you get in trouble with the puck, you just throw it in Ray's direction, and you were generally off the hook. He was so good. And the other thing that playing with Ray allowed me to do was just focus on my defense, because he was the offensive player of that pairing for sure, and all pairings. So I could just work on making sure I was there, backing him up if needed, covering my man, doing all the basics. When I was at Norwich, I transitioned more into an offensive player. But going to the pros, focusing on the defense was what I had to do, and playing with Ray allowed me to do that. The other players that I was fortunate enough to play with back then was Terry O'Reilly, who later became the coach. Heart and soul of the Bruins. He's heart and soul of the Alumni now. The guy would play under any circumstances, body parts hanging off, open wounds. The guy, his threshold of pain was enormous, and he was an inspiration to everybody. He couldn't complain about much, if anything, with Terry around, because he never complained about squat,
No, I think even as a fan, I would often look at him as such a role model for hard work. 80-game schedule, and he just came out every single night and just went through the wall for you every night, and it was great. So it had to be very inspirational, sitting next to that guy in the locker room, getting out there on the ice with him. He was like no other.
Well, he was like no other, but as physical and as hardworking as he was and is, a very smart hockey player to boot, and he worked on his craft. Again, I felt lucky because he'd always go out before practice and stay late after practice and work with people like me, young kids who are almost mandated to go out early and stay out late. He stayed out with us and would play 4-on-4 games, 1-on-1 games, and he'd give you tips about this and that, the body positioning. And I learned a lot from Terry, not only as a teammate, but as when he was the coach as well.
Yeah, I always feel like in retrospect, two things about Terry O'Reilly are very underrated. Number one, his ability. That he was a 2-time NHL All-Star, and his ability as a coach. I felt he was one of the better Bruins coaches of all time. Really, you guys had a lot of success under him, and things things go on as they do in hockey. But obviously, look back at him on both, and like you said, the word you used is smart. He was an intelligent guy, and a lot of people who don't know that watch YouTube videos and think of the fighting, and he was a heck of a fighter. But also a very thoughtful man, and obviously a great opportunity for a young guy like you to play with a guy like him. There was one other guy who often gets who gets forgotten in that mix of those teams, who was a highly productive player. And it's a guy named Charlie Simmer, who was in Triple Crown line with the Los Angeles Kings, and a big scorer there. Came over to the Bruins after a contract dispute in L.A., and he was banged up a little bit here and there, but he was highly productive. What are your memories of Charlie?
I love Charlie Simmer. That's what I'm going to tell you. There's a trivia question, Mark, and you're going to get the answer because I think you'll get the answer. It's a two-part trivia question. Who scored the 10,000th goal in the Boston Garden?
I don't know. I'm going to guess Charlie Simmer.
You're going to guess Charlie Simmer, and you're correct. Who got the assist?
I'm hoping it's Frank Simonetti.
You got it. That's a very obscure trivia question that I like telling. And Charlie and I lived in the same town in Boxford, and we would drive in to practice in the games together, so we became quite friendly. Charlie wasn't the fastest guy or the best skater, but he was always in the right position. And I think one year, maybe that year or the 85, 86 year, he got 50 goals with the Bruins or close to it. Mm-hmm. He got banged up. He got a bad eye injury. But that year he was scoring goals. I mean, the pucks were going in off his butt, off his head. It didn't matter. He was always in the right place, and he was a big target and very good hands for a big guy. I really love playing with Charlie Simmer.
As your career went on with the Bruins acquire from the Vancouver Canucks Cam Neely, who was kind of was an unknown quantity at the time. Not everybody knew. He had played a few years in Vancouver, obviously, and wasn't a big scorer. He comes into Boston, and everything kind of changes. Your team takes a huge leap. He's just an absolute force. What are your memories of playing with Cam Neely?
Well, interestingly, the first training camp, Jeff Courtnall introduces me to Cam Neely in the locker room, one of the first days of training camp. He says, "Hey, Frank, this is Cam Neely. Cam would like your number 21. I said, I don't know how that works, but I don't know, probably not. You never knew what Cam was going to turn into as a player. He was just a guy, right? I mean, he was an accomplished fighter, but he hadn't reached legendary status yet. But the fact was that it was up to the Bruins who got what number. And Harry Sinden wanted him to wear number 8. So the trade was never made of jerseys. When I retired, he went, as I understand it, went back into Harry. I said, "Look, I really want to wear number 8," and Harry said no. I mean, number 21, and Harry said no. So I'm not sure Cam and I got off on the right foot.
Right.
With respect to the number exchange, but we worked together for a little bit. He was a tremendous teammate. I mean, you talk about Terry O'Reilly and his grit and his passion for the game. Cam had that in spades. An enormous talent and physically strong. I mean, I don't know if it was natural or if it's something he worked on or a collection of both, but the man was incredibly strong, upper body strength. I mean, you could see the way he just tossed people around, pushed people around out there. He was a quintessential power forward, and with a mean streak that gave him a lot of room on the ice when he was playing, and he took full advantage of that. You could have given me twice as much room, and I wouldn't have done a tenth of what he did with it, if you know what I mean.
Right.
He had a tremendous knack for scoring. I just happened to watch there was a YouTube video out recently of Cam when he scored, was it 46 goals in 48 games, whatever that was, or 50 goals in 46 games, and they showed all the goals. So I watched it all. And some of them he made look so easy, and they weren't. And some of them were just acrobatic feats of magic. Some of the behind the backs and this and that and dives. He was as focused as any of the players the Bruins have ever had, and really the kind of guy you want on your team. They don't fall off trees, as you know, but the Bruins are very lucky to have Cam Neely. I mean, they gave up Barry Peterson, if I recall, in that trade, which people were somewhat upset about at the time, but it didn't take long for Cam to place his stamp on the organization. And, well, there he is still today as a figurehead, well deserved.
Right. Your career goes on, and it happens so many times with players. Injuries become a key factor in abbreviating your pro career. When did you reach the decision that it was time to pursue your career outside of hockey and leave the NHL?
Well, you're right there, Mark, on the accumulation of injuries, shoulder operation, knee operation, back problem, number of things. But you look at it, and I also saw myself slipping down the depth chart, right? And you say, well, do you want to go and play somewhere else? Or do you want to take the opportunity that was presented to me at the time, which was to move into a business, which I'd been doing in the summers. So I had made the decision after my fourth season. I suffered another knee injury, and I said, I'm going to voluntarily retire, which, I've thought back to that day and wondered if and what ifs and this and that, but it seemed like the right decision at the time. So that's what I did. So it was a combination of injuries plus moving down the depth chart and not really looking to go play outside of my hometown.
Your association with the Bruins and the hockey community continues today on multiple fronts. First of all, the Boston Bruins alumni, which I've been involved with for 4 years now, and a great group. You guys seem like you're having a heck of a time out there every night. John Horgan and Bob Cormier and the whole team puts on a great performance. The alumni, led by Nifty Middleton and Terry O'Reilly, I think is probably the most robust alumni in the National Hockey League. It's got to be a lot of fun getting out there with the guys and playing, wearing that number 21 in the smoked bee.
Well, I think I'm in my 30th year of alumni hockey, Mark. So to say that I'm enjoying it would be an understatement. We're very fortunate here that the likes of Eddie Sanford and Woody Dumart and John Busey founded the alumni group back 50 years ago now, I believe it is.
Right.
And back then it was true barnstorming, just moving, playing around here and there, just keeping their toe in the game. And now with Busey, he took it over for a while, ran it for a long time actually, and Bobby Sweeney now. Rick Middleton, it has taken on a bigger and better life. We're all very fortunate to have played for the Bruins, and many, many former players retire here because it's such a wonderful community, a hockey community, a great place to raise your kids. And I know to a man we're all we feel very fortunate that we can give back and go out and play these charity hockey games, not only all over New England, but we're extending our reach up into Canada now. We've gone down to Tampa to play the Lightning alumni. We've gone out to Colorado to play the Avalanche alumni, Detroit. So when we have a chance, we spread our wings a little bit, but for the most part, we're tried and true helping New England organizations raise funds through charity hockey games, through golf tournaments, and different appearances and the like. We have a great core group of people that show up to games, drive to Maine, drive to Vermont, just to get out and meet the people and have a good time, sharing hockey and helping grow the game as best we can. There have been times in the last 10 or 20 years when the big team hasn't been doing so well, and the alumni activity actually helps, share the love, spread the love.
Oh, absolutely.
And keep hockey in the forefront when maybe things aren't going with the big club. I know that may seem like an overreach, but I know the Bruins team appreciates what the alumni does. They take very good care of us at the Garden and supporting our activities. So it's a very good synergistic relationship in good and bad times.
Absolutely. It's still great to see you guys take the ice, get announced, and it's great to see those Bruin uniforms out there and the guys who help make that franchise so great. In addition to the alumni and your efforts there, you became involved with the Dana Farber Institute, and particularly a great project for you, passion project, if you will, is Bowl with the Bruin, which I participated in last year, and I thought it was fantastic. People really loved it. A great turnout of players, a good testament to you. Not only the players who are regularly with the alumni, but because it was in the off season, you get access to a couple other guys last year who fans don't see often. Rick Smith, Steve Casper, Bob Carpenter. Talk a little bit about Dana Farber and the Bowl with the Bruin event.
Well, it really starts with the Boston Bruins Foundation, which participates. Well, they do a number of charitable events, but one of their core causes is to put a team into the Pan Mass Challenge bike ride, which raises money for life-saving care at Dana Farber Cancer Institute. And for those who don't know, the Pan Mass Challenge bike ride is a 2-day, 192-mile bike ride starting in Sturbridge, Mass, and ending in Provincetown on the Cape. And just to give a little bit of props to the PMC, they've been running the event for 39 years now, and they have raised a total of $598 million over that time period. Which is the single most successful sporting event fundraiser in the world. So we've got that to hang our hat on. Mm-hmm. The Bruins Foundation, getting back to Mr. Terry O'Reilly, he was riding in the Pan Mass Challenge along with Gary Doak for 3 or 4 years before the Bruins Foundation got involved. And he was really trying hard to get some of the guys, former players, to ride with him. And he convinced Bob Sweeney to enter a team under the Foundation's name 13 years ago. I joined a year later, along with the likes over the course of those 13 years of riding with Sean McEachran, Rick Middleton, Dokie, Terry O'Reilly, Tim Sweeney, Bob Sweeney, Don Sweeney, Lyndon Byers. I know I'm missing a couple of the guys, but over the years, guys have drifted in and out and ridden with us. Jack Edwards has ridden for a few years, and he was the biggest celebrity in the ride, to be honest with you. So we've been riding now for 13 years, and a requirement for the Pan Mass Challenge is each rider has to raise a certain amount of money. For instance, this year, it's $4,800 per rider. You can raise more, but you will raise a minimum of $4,800. So for a number of years, like most people, I was just asking people for money. Would you give me $100, whatever it is? And 3 years ago, one of my riding partners and PMC friends, one of my best friends, Rich McDonald, said, we should look at doing a bowling tournament. He asked that because in Tewksbury, where he works, they had just put up a beautiful bowling entertainment facility, Wamisit Lanes. He had been there. He said, boy, this place is gorgeous. What a nice place for an event. Okay. I went down to look at it and said, we could do this, but let's make it better. Let's run it like a golf tournament, a celebrity golf tournament, where each team gets paired with a former Boston Bruin. Hence the name Bowl with the Bruin. And as we add in people like this year, Steve Nelson, New England Patriots legend, Dr. Hook from Slapshot, and other friends, we now call it Bowl of the Bruin and Friends. And this will be our third year. It'll be held May 20th. It's a Sunday. And we do have another special guest this year. One, Ray Bourque, will be joining the squad and showing off his bowling skills. So we're very lucky to have this facility. It has 36 lanes. We'll have at least 34, 35 teams. Maybe we'll sell the place out this year. And all the money that's raised goes to the foundation, who then turns it over to Dana Farber in the Pan Mass Challenge. So this is our vehicle to raise money for PMC and Dana Farber Cancer Institute. And as you said, Mark, you were there last year. It is a great time, and you missed a guy that showed up last year, Eddie Sanford, 94 years old.
Right.
And I think you just had a picture with him last week and saw him. He is vibrant. He came out in bold, and he came up to me during the event and said, "Frank, I gotta thank you. You're bringing multiple generations of players together. This is a testament to the Bruins alumni and the force that they are in the community." And he was over the moon happy that he was invited, for one, and that he got to talk to so many different players, because he's such a gentleman and such a diehard Bruin through and through, that he really appreciated the event, and I'm glad you did as well. We have a great time. So for anybody who's thinking about it, please visit bowlwiththebruin.org. We'd love to have you as a bowling team, or if you want to sponsor or donate something for prizes, please reach out, and we'd be happy to accommodate them.
That's great, and I would say it's also a great opportunity for the fans to get really up close and really talk to. Obviously at the alumni game, you're on the ice, the fans are in the stands. It's great, you sign autographs. But with the Bowl of the Bruin, you'll be up close and personal with all the Bruins legends, and it is a great, relaxing, fun, and obviously beneficial event. So, Frank, we greatly appreciate you being with us here today. We look forward to seeing you on May 20th, and thanks for spending the time with us today, Frank.
My pleasure, Mark, and thanks for everything you do.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Frank.
Thanks for listening to the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast. Be sure to visit us at prohockeyalumni.org.
This episode of the Pro Hockey Alumni Podcast is sponsored by Pro Stock Hockey, your online source for authentic Pro Stock hockey equipment, sticks, gloves, and all the rest. If the pros don't use it, they don't sell it. Visit ProStockHockey.com.